The transport ship broke through the clouds of 7. An ambassador pressed his face against the viewing window. Below him, the planet looked sick. Brown and gray patches covered the land where green forests once stood. Rivers had turned black from ash and debris. The war had touched every corner of this world. Was a species that looked like tall, thin beings with blue-gray skin and large, dark eyes. His people were scholars, traders, and diplomats. They had built their empire through words and deals, not weapons and blood. But words meant nothing to the Horde. The Horde had come from the dark edges of the galaxy. No one knew where they started or why they destroyed everything they found. They were like a disease that spread from world to world, eating everything in their path. The Empire had lost 43 planets in just 10 years. Millions of his people were dead or missing. That was why was here. His government had sent him to observe the humans. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel about 60 years ago. Most species ignored them at first. They were small, weak, and lived short lives. Their bodies had no natural armor, no claws, and no special abilities. On paper, humans looked like prey animals. But then the Horde attacked human space. The reports that came back confused everyone. The humans did not run. They did not surrender. They did not ask for help. Instead, they pushed back. Hard. In 5 years of fighting, humans had not lost a single world to the Horde. They were the only species in recorded history to make the Horde retreat. Needed to understand how. The transport landed on a flat area of cleared ground. Around the landing zone could see the human forward base. It was not pretty. There were no tall towers or beautiful buildings like military bases. Instead, there were low structures made of metal and concrete, half buried in the dirt. Everything was the color of mud and dust. The door of the transport opened and stepped out into the air of 7. It smelled like smoke and something chemical. He wrapped his robes around himself. The planet was cold. A human soldier walked toward him. The man was young, with short black hair and a serious face. He wore heavy armor that covered his entire body, and he carried a weapon on his back that was almost as long as was tall. "Ambassador," the soldier asked. "Yes, that is me." "I'm Sergeant. I'll be your escort during your visit. Please follow me." Walked beside the sergeant, his long legs easily matching the human's pace. As they moved through the base, observed everything. Human soldiers moved around them, some carrying equipment, others cleaning weapons, and a few just sitting and eating food from small packages. They all looked tired. That was the first thing noticed. Dark circles under their eyes, slow movements, faces that showed no happiness. But they also looked focused. Every soldier knew exactly what they were doing. There was no confusion, no wasted motion. "How long has this base been operational?" asked. 3 months, Sergeant answered. "We landed 92 days ago." "And the fighting?" "Started on day 1, hasn't stopped since." Looked around again. 3 months of constant fighting. On a world that would have broken their military. Soldiers would be crying, refusing to fight, or running away. But these humans just kept moving, kept working, kept fighting. "Your people are very disciplined," said. Sergeant almost smiled. "Almost. We have to be." They arrived at a large building in the center of the base. Inside, there were screens everywhere, showing maps and numbers and moving dots. Officers stood around a central table, talking in quick, sharp words. This was the command center. "General Lee will meet with you shortly," Sergeant said. "Please wait here." Stood in the corner and watched. The officers were planning something. He could see them drawing lines on the map, pointing at different locations, arguing about numbers. It reminded him of war rooms, but there was something different here. The planned wars to minimize losses. Every decision was about how to save the most lives. These humans were planning something else. They were planning how to win. After about 30 minutes, a door opened and a woman walked in. She was shorter than most of the other officers, with gray hair tied back in a tight knot. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She wore the same armor as everyone else, but hers had more marks and scratches. This was General Lee. "Ambassador," she said, walking toward. Her voice was calm but strong. "Welcome to Forward Base Echo. I apologize for making you wait." "Not at all, General. I understand you are very busy." "Always," she gestured for him to follow. "Come, I'll show you what we're doing here." They walked through the base together. General Lee explained the situation. The Horde had invaded 7-8 months ago. The original inhabitants, a peaceful species called the Mora, had been almost completely destroyed. By the time humans arrived, there were only about 50,000 Mora left from a population of 2 billion. "That's terrible," said softly. "Yes," General Lee agreed. Her voice did not shake or break. It stayed flat and calm. "It is. And your mission is to save the remaining Mora. Our mission is to kill every Horde creature on this planet. Saving the Mora is part of that, but it's not the main goal." Stopped walking. "I'm sorry, did you say kill every Horde creature? There are estimated to be several million Horde on 7. General Lee looked at him with those sharp eyes. "I know. That would take years, perhaps decades. We've been here 3 months. We're ahead of schedule." Did not know what to say. Ahead of schedule. The words bounced around in his head. How could any army be ahead of schedule when fighting millions of enemies? General Lee started walking again. "I want you to meet some of my officers. Specifically, I want you to meet Captain Park. She commands our best squad." "Best in what way?" "In every way that matters." They walked to another part of the base. This area was quieter. There were fewer soldiers here, but the ones present moved differently. They were faster, sharper, more aware. Their eyes followed as he passed. General Lee stopped in front of a door. "Captain Park is inside. I have to return to command. Sergeant will stay with you." "Thank you, General." General Lee nodded once and walked away, watched her go. There was something about that woman that made him feel very small. It was not her size or her rank. It was something in the way she looked at the world, like she had seen everything terrible and refused to look away. Turned to the door. Behind it was Captain Park and answers to questions he had not yet thought to ask. He opened the door and stepped inside. The room was small and simple. There were a few chairs, a table covered with maps, and several screens on the walls showing different views of the planet. Standing around the table were 5 human soldiers. Noticed them before they noticed him. They were different from the other soldiers he had seen. Bigger, stronger, covered in thicker armor. Their weapons looked custom-made, heavier and more complex than standard military equipment. These were not regular troops. These were specialists. Then he saw her. Captain Park stood at the center of the group. She was smaller than the others, shorter than most human women had seen. Her armor was the same dark gray as everyone else's, but it looked older, more worn. There were deep scratches across the chest plate, marks that looked like claw wounds, and several small holes that had been filled with repair material. Her face was calm. Not relaxed, just calm. Like still water that could become a storm at any moment. She had short black hair, cut close to her head, and dark eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When entered, those eyes moved to him instantly. She did not seem surprised or curious. She just looked at him the way a person might look at a piece of furniture that had suddenly appeared in their room. "Ambassador," she said. Her voice was soft but clear. "General Lee told us you were coming." Captain Park gave a small bow. "Thank you for meeting with me. This is my squad." She pointed to each member as she spoke their names. "Lieutenant, our heavy weapons expert. Sergeant, sniper. Corporal, close combat. Private Sora Han, explosives and demolition." Each soldier nodded as their name was called. They did not smile or offer greetings. They just watched with the same calm, patient look their captain had. "Your team has an impressive record," said. He had read their files on the transport. "Over 200 successful missions across multiple planets." 217, Lieutenant corrected. He was a large man, even by human standards, with thick arms and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. "My apologies, 217. Captain Park waved her hand. "Numbers don't matter much. What matters is that we're still alive and the enemy is not." Wanted to ask more questions, but an alarm suddenly filled the air. Red lights began flashing on the walls. Every soldier in the room moved at once, grabbing weapons and checking equipment. "What's happening?" asked. "Horde attack," Sergeant said. She was already holding her sniper rifle, checking something on the side of it. "Small group, probably scouts." Small group, felt his hearts beating faster. They had two hearts and both were now working very hard. "Should we find shelter?" Captain Park looked at him. For a moment, something that might have been amusement passed through her eyes. "You can come with us if you want. Stay behind me and don't touch anything." Before could answer, the squad was already moving. He had to run to keep up with them. They moved through the base like water flowing through rocks. They did not push past other soldiers or shout for people to move. They just flowed around everything in their path, always moving forward, never slowing down. Outside, the sounds of fighting were already starting. Could hear the rapid fire of human weapons and the strange, screaming roar of the horde. He had heard recordings of that sound before, but hearing it in person was completely different. It made something deep inside him want to run and hide. The humans did not seem to notice the sound, or if they did not care. They reached the outer wall of the base. Human soldiers were already there, firing at shapes in the distance, climbed up a small platform and looked out. The horde were coming. They were creatures of nightmare. Each one was different, like they had been built from random parts of different animals. Some had too many legs, some had too many eyes, some had bodies that seemed to twist and change as they moved. But they all shared one thing: they were made for killing. There were about 50 of them, running toward the base across the burned ground. 50 contacts, Sergeant said. She had found a position on top of a container and was looking through the scope of her rifle. Range, 800 meters and closing. North side, south, priority targets. Sara, hold back unless we need to blow something up. Captain Park gave her orders quickly and clearly. Everyone else, support positions. The squad spread out. Found himself standing behind Captain Park, who had moved to the center of the wall. She held her weapon, a rifle that was longer than her arm, and watched the approaching enemy. "Why aren't you firing?" asked. "Wait for it." The horde were getting closer. 600 meters, 500, 400. Could now see details he wished he had not seen. Claws that dripped with something dark. Mouths that opened wider than should be possible. Eyes that held no intelligence, only hunger. 300 meters. "Now," Captain Park said. Everything happened at once. Sergeant's rifle cracked and one of the lead horde creatures fell. Then again, and again. Each shot was a kill. She was not missing. Lieutenant opened fire with his heavy weapon. It was not a rifle. It was more like a small cannon. Each shot sent a wave of energy that tore through multiple horde at once. Corporal jumped down from the wall. Wanted to scream at him to come back, but the words died in his throat. Ran toward the horde, not away from them. In his hands were two short blades that glowed with blue light. He hit the enemy line like a blade himself. Watched in shock as the young man cut through one creature, then another, then 3 more. He moved so fast that eyes could barely follow him. And through it all, Captain Park stood still. She was not firing randomly. She was waiting, watching. One horde creature broke through the line and ran straight toward the wall. It was bigger than the others, with armor plates covering its body. Normal weapons seemed to bounce off it. Captain Park raised her rifle. She took one breath. She fired once. The creature's head exploded. She lowered her weapon and looked at. "That's how we do it," she said. The battle was over in less than 3 minutes. All 50 horde were dead. No human was injured. Stood on the wall and stared at the field of bodies below. "This is what you do?" he asked. His voice was shaking. "Every day?" "Sometimes twice," Sergeant said. She was cleaning her rifle like nothing had happened. Corporal climbed back over the wall. His blades were covered in dark horde blood, but he was completely unharmed. He was not even breathing hard. "Good warm-up," he said. Warm-up? They called that a warm-up. Looked at Captain Park. She was watching the horizon, where smoke was rising from distant fires. Her face was still calm, still peaceful. She had just killed a creature that could tear apart in seconds, and she looked like she was thinking about what to eat for dinner. "You are afraid of us now," she said. It was not a question. "Did not lie, yes." "Good." She turned to face him. "Fear keeps people alive. Remember that feeling, Ambassador. Remember it when you go home and tell your leaders about us." "What should I tell them?" Captain Park smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was there. "Tell them that if they stand beside us, they have nothing to fear. The Horde should fear us enough for everyone." She walked past him back toward the base. Her squad followed. Stood alone on the wall, surrounded by death, and wondered what kind of creatures humans really were. 3 days passed on 7. Followed Captain Park and her squad on 4 more missions. Each time he saw the same pattern. The Horde attacked, the humans responded, and bodies filled the ground. It was clean, fast, and brutal. But was a diplomat. His job was not just to watch. His job was to collect information. His government needed numbers, data, and records that could help them understand human military power. On the morning of the 4th day, sat in his small room and reviewed his notes. He had collected a lot of information about human weapons, vehicles, and tactics. He had data about their supply lines, their communication systems, and their medical facilities. But something was missing. Realized he had no real data about individual soldiers. He knew about human armies as a whole, but he knew almost nothing about what made each soldier effective. They believed that understanding individuals was the key to understanding groups. If he wanted to report on human military power, he needed to understand human soldiers as people. He pulled up his and started preparing questions. Standard military assessment questions that diplomats used across the galaxy. Questions about training, experience, combat history, and confirmed kills. That last one was important. Confirmed kills, the number of enemy soldiers a fighter had personally killed, was the standard way to measure individual military success. A soldier with 100 confirmed kills was more valuable than a soldier with 10. Checked the files he had been given about Captain Park. Her profile was strangely incomplete. There were notes about her training, her previous assignments, and her awards. She had more medals than any human soldier her age should have, but one field was blank. Confirmed kills, data unavailable. Frowned, that was unusual. Military records almost always included kill counts. It was basic information. He decided to ask her directly. After breakfast, found Captain Park in the training area. She was teaching younger soldiers how to fight with knives. Watched for a while. Her movements were smooth and controlled, like a dancer performing a deadly dance. When the training session ended, approached her. "Ambassador," she said. She was not sweating despite 2 hours of physical activity. "Do you need something?" "I have some questions for my report, if you have time." "I have time." They walked together through the base, asked his standard questions first. How long had she been a soldier? 15 years. How old was she when she enlisted? 18. What special training had she received? "Many kinds," she said. "Close combat, long-range combat, survival, infiltration, command. The usual." Wrote everything down. Captain Park answered each question simply and directly. She did not add extra details or try to make herself sound impressive. She just stated facts. They reached a quiet area near the edge of the base. There was a small bench made from supply containers, and they sat down together. The burned landscape of 7 stretched out before them. "One more question," said. He looked at his. "Your file is missing some information, specifically your confirmed kill count." Captain Park did not answer immediately. She looked out at the horizon, where black smoke was still rising from distant fires. "That information is classified for officers of my rank and above," she said. "Classified why?" "Because the numbers are considered sensitive. They might affect diplomatic relationships." Did not understand. How could a kill count affect diplomacy? Captain Park turned to look at him. Her eyes were dark and deep, like pools of still water. "Because some numbers are hard for other species to believe." Felt a strange feeling in his chest, something between curiosity and fear. "I need this information for my report, Captain. I understand if the exact number is secret, but can you give me a general range? Is it in the hundreds, the thousands?" Captain Park was silent for a long moment. Around them, the base continued its endless activity. Soldiers moved supplies, vehicles rolled past, and somewhere in the distance, there was the sound of weapons being tested. "If I answer your question," she said finally, "you must promise to include my answer exactly as I give it. No changes, no explanations, no context, just my words." "I promise." She nodded slowly, "Then ask your question again." Held up his, ready to record. His hands were shaking slightly. He did not know why. "Captain Park, for official military records, what is your confirmed kill count?" Captain Park tilted her head. It was a small movement, like a bird considering something interesting. Her expression did not change. Her voice stayed calm and soft. "This year or just this planet?" His translator buzzed in his ear. He thought there was an error. Maybe the human words had been translated wrong. He asked her to repeat. "This year," she said slowly, "or just this planet?" No error. She had said exactly what he thought she said. His mind raced. The question only made sense if her kills this year were different from her kills on this planet. If she had killed on other planets this same year. If the numbers were large enough that she needed to separate them by location. "Both," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Tell me both." Captain Park stood up from the bench. She looked down at, and for the first time he saw something in her eyes. Not anger, not pride, not sadness. Something older, something heavier. "On this planet in the past 3 months, my confirmed kills are 14,722. She paused. "This year total, across all operations, 81,409. Stopped breathing. 81,000. In 1 year, 1 soldier, 1 human woman who was smaller than half the aliens in the galaxy." How? The word fell out of his mouth before he could stop it. "Orbital strikes that I called in count as my kills," she explained. Her voice was still calm, still soft. "Same with explosives I placed, traps I designed, and poison I deployed. Direct combat kills are only about 12,000. Only 12,000. She said it like it was a small number, like it was nothing special. "The Horde does not send small armies," she continued. "When they attack, they send hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions. If we want to win, we need to kill them faster than they can replace themselves. That means we need soldiers who can kill in large numbers. And you are one of those soldiers." "I am one of many." She looked back at the horizon. "I'm not even the best. Lieutenant has more kills than me this year, so does Sergeant." Felt like the ground was moving beneath him. Everything he thought he understood about war was wrong. The considered a soldier with 1,000 lifetime kills to be a legendary hero. This woman had killed 80 times that in a single year. "Is this information going in your report?" Captain Park asked. looked at his. The numbers stared back at him. 14,000, 81,000. Numbers that would change everything his government believed about humans. "Yes," he said, "I promised." Captain Park nodded. "Good. They need to understand what we are." She walked away, leaving alone on the bench. He sat there for a long time, staring at his, trying to understand the creatures called humans. Did not sleep that night. He lay on his small bed in the guest quarters and stared at the ceiling. The numbers kept spinning in his head. 14,000, 81,000, one soldier, 1 year. He tried to put it in context. The entire military had killed perhaps 300,000 Horde in 10 years of war. That was their total. Every soldier, every ship, every weapon. 300,000 kills over a decade. One human woman had killed almost a third of that number in 12 months. There had to be a mistake. Kept telling himself that. Human record-keeping must be different. Maybe they counted differently. Maybe they exaggerated. Every species exaggerated their military strength to impress potential allies. But Captain Park had not seemed like she was boasting. She had answered his question the same way she answered every question, simply, directly, without emotion, like she was telling him the weather or the time of day. Around midnight, gave up on sleep. He got out of bed, dressed himself, and walked out into the base. Even at night, the human camp never stopped. Soldiers patrolled the walls, technicians repaired vehicles, and supply officers counted inventory. The war did not pause for darkness. He found himself walking toward the command center. Maybe General Lee could explain things. Maybe she could help him understand. The command center was quieter at night, but not empty. A few officers stood around the central table, monitoring screens that showed the movements of Horde forces across the planet. General Lee was not there. But Captain Park was. She stood alone in a corner, looking at a smaller screen that showed a single section of the map. Her face was lit by the blue glow of the display. She looked tired, not physically tired, but tired in a deeper way, like someone carrying a weight that never got lighter. Approached her, "Captain." She did not turn around. "Ambassador can't sleep." "No, your answer is still in my head." "Which part?" "All of it." Stood beside her and looked at the screen. It showed a mountain range about 200 kilometers from the base. Red dots covered the mountain's Horde positions. There were thousands of them. How do you live with those numbers? Captain Park was quiet for a moment. "I think about what the numbers mean," she said finally. "Every kill is one less monster that will hurt someone innocent. Every death I cause is a life I save somewhere else." That is a very simple way to see it. War is simple, Ambassador. Complicated thinking is for peacetime. In war, you just need to know who is trying to kill innocent people and stop them. Everything else is noise. Thought about the approach to war. Committees discussed every action. Philosophers debated the ethics of each battle. Sometimes, by the time they made a decision, the enemy had already moved. Humans did not seem to have that problem. "Can I ask you something personal?" said. "You can ask, I might not answer." "Do you feel anything when you kill? Guilt, sadness, anything?" Captain Park finally turned to look at him. In the blue light, her face looked younger than it probably was, but her eyes were old. Very, very old. "I feel many things," she said, "but I don't let those feelings stop me from doing what needs to be done. The Horde killed 2 billion Mora on this planet. Men, women, children, elderly. They didn't feel guilt or sadness. They just killed. If I stop to feel sorry for the monsters, more innocent people will die. But surely there must be limits, even in war." "There are limits." Her voice hardened slightly. "We don't kill prisoners. We don't attack civilians. We don't use weapons that cause unnecessary suffering. We follow the rules of war that humanity agreed upon centuries ago." "And the Horde?" "The Horde follows no rules. They eat their enemies alive. They use civilian populations as bait. They turn captured soldiers into weapons against their own people. Captain Park looked back at the screen. That's why we have to be better than them, faster, stronger, more efficient. We have to be the thing that monsters fear. Understood now. Humans were not mindless killers. They were controlled killers. They had rules, ethics, and limits. But within those limits, they were absolutely ruthless. It was terrifying and admirable at the same time. Your people, said slowly, could probably conquer the entire galaxy if you wanted to. Captain Park almost laughed. It was a small sound, barely more than a breath. We probably could, but we don't want to. Why not? Because we're tired, Ambassador. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. Wars over land, resources, religion, ideas. We fought so many wars that we got very, very good at it. But being good at war doesn't mean we enjoy it. Most of us just want to live in peace, raise our families, and explore the universe. Then why do you fight the Horde? Because they won't let us live in peace. They attacked our worlds first. They killed our people first. We tried to negotiate. We tried to communicate. We tried everything peaceful species try. None of it worked. Her eyes grew harder. So now we fight, not because we want to, but because we have to. Nodded slowly. This was what his government needed to understand. Humans were not aggressive conquerors seeking to dominate the galaxy. They were defenders. They fought because fighting was necessary, and they were good at it because generations of war had made them good. If the Empire allies with humanity, said, what can we expect? Protection, Captain Park said simply. We will defend your worlds the same way we defend our own. We will train your soldiers, share our weapons, and stand beside you against any enemy. And in return, resources, intelligence, bases where we can station our ships. The Horde is everywhere, Ambassador. We can't fight them alone. We need allies who can help us cover more space. That sounds fair. It is fair. We don't want to rule your empire. We don't want to control your people. We just want partners who will stand with us until this war is over. Looked at the map again. The red dots seemed less threatening now. Not because there were fewer of them, but because he knew what humans could do to them. I will recommend the alliance, he said, strongly. Captain Park nodded. Thank you, Ambassador. But I have one more question. Go ahead. Pointed at the mountain range on the screen. Those Horde positions, there are thousands of them. How do you plan to deal with them? Captain Park smiled. It was a real smile this time, small but genuine. We're launching an attack tomorrow morning. Would you like to watch? Watch. From a safe distance, of course, but it might help your report. You can see exactly how humans fight when we're not just defending. Felt fear and curiosity fighting inside him. Curiosity won. Yes, he said, I would like to see that very much. Good. Captain Park turned off her screen and walked toward the door. Get some sleep, Ambassador. Tomorrow is going to be educational. She left him alone in the command center, surrounded by maps of a dying world and the quiet hum of machines planning its salvation. Looked at the red dots one more time. Tomorrow, most of them would be dead. He finally understood why the Horde feared humans. The sun rose over 7 like a bleeding wound. Red and orange light spilled across the burned landscape, turning the smoke in the air into rivers of fire. Stood on an observation platform at the edge of the base, wrapped in protective clothing, and watched the mountains in the distance. The attack was about to begin. Beside him stood Sergeant, the same soldier who had greeted him on his first day. They had not spoken much during his visit, but the sergeant seemed comfortable with silence. How many soldiers are participating in this operation? Asked. About 800, Sergeant replied, plus air support and orbital assets. 800 soldiers against thousands of Horde. In the military, that would be considered suicide, but had learned to stop comparing. A sound filled the air. At first thought it was thunder, Then he looked up and saw shapes cutting across the sky. Human aircraft flying in perfect formation, heading toward the mountains. The first wave had begun. Light flashed in the distance. Even from this far away, could see explosions blooming on the mountainside. The aircraft were dropping something, bombs or missiles or weapons did not recognize. Each explosion sent pillars of fire into the sky. Phase 1, Sergeant said, soften the defenses. The bombing continued for 10 minutes. When it stopped, the mountains looked different. Entire sections had collapsed. Smoke rose from dozens of fires. The neat rows of red dots had seen on the map were now scattered and broken. Then came the second sound. It was deeper than the aircraft, more powerful. Looked up again and saw something he did not understand at first. A beam of light was descending from the sky, brilliant white and perfectly straight. It touched the largest horde position on the mountain. The mountain exploded. Not just the horde position, the entire mountain peak. Rock and fire shot into the air, reaching so high that could not see where it ended. The sound reached them a moment later, a roar so deep that it shook the ground beneath his feet. Orbital strike, Sergeant said. His voice was casual, like he was describing the weather. We saved it for their main base. Stared at the smoking ruin where a mountain had been. His translator was not giving him words anymore. There were no words for what he was seeing. The human soldiers began their ground assault while the dust was still settling. Watched through enhanced viewing equipment as small figures moved up the mountainside. They did not march in formations. They moved in small groups, spreading out, covering each other, always advancing. The surviving horde tried to fight back. They poured out of their remaining positions, thousands of monsters rushing to meet the human attackers. From this distance, it looked like two waves crashing into each other. But only one wave kept moving forward. The humans cut through the horde like blades through paper. Every time a monster appeared, it died. Every time the horde tried to organize, explosions scattered them. The human advance never slowed, never stopped, never retreated. Saw Captain Park through his viewing equipment. She was at the front of her squad, moving faster than the others. Her weapon never stopped firing. Bodies fell around her like rain. By noon, it was over. The horde positions in the mountains were gone. Not captured, not surrounded, not forced to retreat. Gone. The humans had killed every single one of them. 800 soldiers against thousands of horde. Human casualties, 17 wounded, 0 dead. Returned to his quarters and began writing his report. His hands were shaking. He had to stop several times to collect his thoughts. What he had witnessed was not just a battle. It was a demonstration of military power beyond anything they had imagined. He wrote for hours. He described the weapons, the tactics, the organization. He wrote about Captain Park and her kill count. He wrote about the orbital strike that destroyed a mountain. He wrote everything he had seen and heard and felt. When he finished, he read it again. It sounded like fiction, like the kind of story children told to scare each other. No one would believe it. But it was true. Every word was true. That evening, General Lee summoned him to her office. The room was small, like everything else on the base. Simple furniture, maps on the walls, and a window that looked out over the burning horizon. "Your transport leaves tomorrow morning," General Lee said. "I hope your visit was useful." "It was, educational," replied. "General, may I speak honestly?" "Always." Took a deep breath. "When I arrived here, I thought humans were just another species. A bit strange, perhaps, but basically similar to the rest of us. I was wrong." General Lee raised an eyebrow. "How so?" "You are not similar to us at all. You are something entirely different, the fight to survive. We fight to protect ourselves, but humans—" He searched for the right words. "Humans fight to win. There is a difference." General Lee nodded slowly. "There is. I watched your soldiers today. They did not fight like people who wanted to stay alive. They fought like people who had already accepted death and moved past it, like death was just one more obstacle to overcome. Our soldiers are well trained. No, shook his head. It is more than training. I have seen trained soldiers from many species, Mara, even some of the older spacefaring races. None of them fight like your people. None of them have that hunger. General Lee was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to her window and looked out at the darkening sky. Humanity spent most of its history killing itself, she said. War after war after war. We got so good at it that we almost destroyed our own world, twice. 3 times if you count the slower disasters. She paused. When we finally achieved peace, we thought we were done fighting. We thought we had evolved past violence. What happened? The Horde happened. They attacked our colonies without warning, killed millions before we even understood what was happening. Her voice grew harder. We learned something important that day. We had not evolved past violence. We had just stored it, saved it, waited for an enemy worthy of everything we had learned over thousands of years of killing each other. And now you have that enemy. Yes, General Lee turned back to face him. The Horde is everything humanity ever feared. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be stopped through diplomacy. They only understand one thing, power, and we have more power than they ever imagined. Understood now. Humans were not naturally violent. They were not born warriors, but they had been forged by violence, shaped by it, made strong by it. All those centuries of fighting each other had created a species that could fight anything. The Horde had awakened something in humanity, something old and terrible and unstoppable. I will recommend the alliance, said. My government will agree. After they read my report, they will have no choice. Good, General Lee offered her hand. Had learned this human gesture, the handshake, a sign of agreement and respect. He took her hand carefully. One last thing, Ambassador, General Lee said. When you go home, tell your people not to be afraid of us. We know how we look. We know what we are capable of. But we choose to use that capability to protect others, not dominate them. I will tell them. Tell them that humans are the best friends anyone could have. She squeezed his hand slightly. And the worst enemies. The next morning, boarded his transport and left 7. As the ship rose through the atmosphere, he looked down at the planet below. Somewhere down there, Captain Park and her squad were already preparing for their next mission. More Horde would die today, and tomorrow, and every day until the war was over. He opened his and read his report one more time. The numbers still seemed impossible, but they were real. 14,000 kills in 3 months, 81,000 in 1 year, 1 soldier, 1 human woman with calm eyes and steady hands. Finally understood why the Horde feared the humans. They did not just fight wars. They finished them.